Salut everyone! I've been using the Asus ProArt 870E Creator Wi-Fi for more than a month now. And I believe it's time to share with you my feedback and give a proper review. Are you ready? Let's get into it. As always, let's start with a little bit of context. I know there is a lot of review out there of this motherboard, but most of them, they cover the Windows approach, right? Like, what is their experience on Windows? In this specific video, I'm gonna be focusing on the experience on Linux mainly. This is important because you will see it won't be exactly the same that on Windows. So the second point I want to mention here really quick is that I've been using this motherboard for more than a month, and I've been using it on different distros. I've been using it with different memory sticks, like different RAM, and I've been also using it with different GPU. I've been overclocking it. I will be talking about it in the rest of the video, don't be worried. But overall, I've been doing a pretty extensive testing on this motherboard. I want you to be aware of it. It is not just like, you know, I read the manual, put it there, and no. I've done a lot of things on the motherboard so far. And the third point I want to mention related to this motherboard is why I chose it before even knowing if it will be running properly on Linux or not. I did watch the video from Mendel. I'm gonna put the link in the description below for you to watch it, because he already made a review about this motherboard on Linux, but it was more like an overall like review on how it would perform in a Linux server type of approach. Me, I will be more focusing on the desktop side. And I did choose this specific motherboard because the way I think about investing in hardware when I upgrade my, motherboard, CPU or GPU is always to think about the second life I'm gonna get out of my hardware after an upgrade. So to give you an example, like what I'm planning to do with this specific motherboard after like upgrading maybe in 2 or 3 years from now with the latest generation of CPU or GPU is to put it in my rack server in my basement and use it as a platform for my home lab. This is what I've been doing for the last like I would say like 15 years. Each time I bought this type of like hardware, I'm always thinking about how it will actually like function as a home lab platform, like a Linux server platform. And you will see like the most attractive point toward this platform is the fact that there is a 10 gigabyte Ethernet port on the motherboard and a 2.5 one. So from I would say like network speed, I will be golden, and I won't have to use an extra like PCI Express port here. And the other like key point for me was an explicit ECC DDR5 support. So this platform supports ECC, and it's actually like activable or deactivable within the BIOS of this motherboard. So this is awesome, and that's the reason why I jumped towards this card, even if it's a little bit on the expensive side there. So now let's talk about all the positive points I found while using this motherboard for the last month and a half almost. So the first point I want to mention, obviously, is a dual Ethernet support there, like 10 gigabyte, 2.5 gigabyte speed on the back of the motherboard is actually awesome. I want to say here that the performance on Linux was golden. I run a home network at 10 gigabyte here, and I never had any issue related to disconnection or anything. Everything is supported out of the box. This is really good. So the second good point related to this card, I didn't use it on Linux, but it's still present, is the fact that you have a dual USB 4 connectivity on the back of the motherboard here. What it really does is that you can plug a DisplayPort output directly from your graphic card into the motherboard and get two output displays. So you see, use a video capable USB-C Type-C, so which is in fact like a Thunderbolt output cable to connect a monitor with the USB Type-C port to the left-hand USB port of the rear of the motherboard. So this will give you an extra video output if you run through the motherboard itself. So I personally don't use this feature, but I think it could be really useful in certain case scenario. Now the third point, which is super important in my opinion, is the support out of the box of ECC RAM. So if you plan to use this motherboard as a server base, it will be actually really good. And this is definitely a plus, in my opinion, versus all the other brands out there, because you could put a 9950X CPU out there and then put like a nice Proxmox server on that and have best of both worlds, right? Like having like professional grade type of memory on a nice small motherboard like that, which is pretty good in my opinion. Now I'm talking about the server side. Obviously, you need to look at the IOMMU type of approach here, and you will see here all the different devices and group you have with your IOMMU dispatch. So I'm gonna, go slowly here, up and down. But I do believe you won't have any issue passing through any of the PCI Express port or the NVMe drive. If you are using, for example, a QEMU server or Proxmox, it should be fine. I like the way they cut everything there. So look if it's good enough for you. I believe it would be perfect for a server usage when I put it in my rack. Another great point related to this motherboard is the fact that you can put a lot of NVMe drive on it. I'm going to talk, some of them are in the negative part, but if you look at them, you will be able to put 4 NVMe drive. There is some limitation, we're going to talk about it, and especially for this lot here. But you can also add extra NVMe PCI Express card. I'm talking about a card like this, where you can add 4 NVMe drive without almost no speed limit, because this motherboard supports bifurcation on all of the 3 PCI Express ports. The first one is a 4x4x4. The second one will be a 4x4, so you can only put 2 NVMe drive here in theory. And again, there is more limitation related to this PCI export shared with this one in terms of speed. And on the last one, you can add a simple NVMe by 4 here. In a crazy and perfect world, if you don't have a graphic card in this motherboard and just use it as a server, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4 NVMe drive plus 4 here on this port. So you could have up to 8 NVMe drive, no problem. So this is, in my opinion, a good one too, to know that bifurcation is supported out of the box. So another point, which might be maybe not as great as the previous one, but still pretty cool, is the fact that this motherboard is super easy to handle when you put new part in it. So I was kind of skeptical about those features. And to be fair, this one, I didn't see really the value added, because when you put the motherboard inside your case, you're gonna have something blocking you here, so you won't be able to use this feature, take your graphic card out like that. But what I really appreciate is all those toolless little click. I would say call them click or latch. They call it quick release or quick latch. But you don't need a screwdriver at all, and this is actually pretty neat. So you have this big cooler here, you just release by pressing a button. No problem here, I really appreciate that. But the one I like the most is this one. So when you install an NVMe drive, you have a little plastic latch. And you have this little plastic latch on every NVMe slot. And this is really cool. I had to remove the NVMe drive to install like Windows, because Windows doesn't like when you have NVMe drive with Linux installed, like multiple of them. So you have to remove them, install Windows, and then put them back. And man, like this was really awesome. And I thought it was really gimmicky at the beginning, but it's not at all. Like this really bring value. And now the latest one. So this one is in case you have like smallest NVMe drive. Again, you just put this little like plastic slide here and you have the same system. And this is actually working very well. I tested it. It's actually pretty cool. Now, another feature I really enjoyed is when you go into the BIOS, you have this screen where you can see in real time what is connected to your motherboard and at what speed. And again, it sounds like it's a little bit gimmicky, but it kind of helped me when I had to troubleshoot a specific situation I was in when I set up my NVMe drive and my graphic card. We'll talk about it in the negative point, but this little feature in the BIOS is actually really nice to have. And I wanted to share that with you. I think a lot of like reviewers didn't talk about it, but it's actually really nice to see in real time what is connected and not connected. Nice one. Another point I appreciate, I think this one might be a little bit subjective, but I do believe that most of the sound card, even on the really high-end like motherboard, they are not as powerful as they pretend to be. And I personally use a full mixer connected to a USB port on my motherboard. I really appreciate the fact that they have like a really minimalistic sound card here with one mic in, one line out, and one line in. Because if you think about it, it's more space for all the other features there. And yes, I like it. I know some of you guys are going to be like, yeah, but I don't have any output and whatever. I do believe that if you have a really great sound system, you're not using this sound card. Just my 2 cents. You're going to get like an actual like real sound card or maybe another like real like processing unit outside of the motherboard like I did with my Behringer mixer here. So yeah, another positive in my book. Now let's talk about the overclocking. So this motherboard, if you go on their website, they're like, oh yeah, this is a great overclocking, AI overclocking or whatever. I want to share my perspective on that. I really like to overclock. I've been overclocking like all my CPU and I did overclock this one too. For the AM5 platform, you are already like 3 ways of overclocking. You have the old school one, I would say, where you just play with the SoC and fixed a specific frequency on the CPU. Some of my buddies were able to reach like 5.7 gigahertz on their 9800 X3D to give you an idea. Stable, but by having like the CPU only staying at this specific frequency. I'm not a fan of that. I know some of you guys might like it. It is definitively possible with this motherboard, no problem at all. The second approach to overclocking is with PBO and a little like undervolt on the curve optimizer. I've been doing that. All the features are there. It is working very well. My overclock is super stable. I have nothing to say about that. But there is a third way of overclocking, which is available on the more like, I wouldn't say high-end, but more like gamer motherboard out there, which is called like the ECLK overclock. So the approach here is like you would have like a range of BCLK frequency here. This is the one here at 100, and you will be able to tune it to gain extra megahertz, extra frequency. And your CPU will range between the value you will put there. I don't want to get like too deep into it, but the idea here is like this motherboard doesn't support it. I have to say I was a little bit upset when I learned about it, because this motherboard has definitively like good VRM. It has like all the good stuff that come with it. I don't understand why they wouldn't put it on this platform. So I'm guessing it's because it's more like a power station type of motherboard and not like a gamer one. But I have to say I was pretty disappointed by that. If you are planning to do ECLK overclocking, well, don't get this card. Simple as that. So now we covered all the good part. Let's talk about the negative point related to this motherboard. The first one I want to talk about is the price point. The price point in my book is a little bit expensive. Okay, I know that it comes with a lot of features that most of the other motherboard don't have, but I still believe it's a little bit too expensive for what it is. It's subjective, but let's say you don't need the 10 gigabyte Ethernet port and you don't care about ECC, I wouldn't recommend to go with this card. Like I will really like push you toward like the ASRock Nova, for example, which is more affordable and will give you all the bell and whistle. The second point I want to mention is related to the packaging. So when you get the box, I don't have it right now, but like when you open the box, you don't have this premium feeling you would get for this type of price range. My previous motherboard was a Asus Crosshair Dark Hero. And it was, I believe, like less expensive than this motherboard, but it was like the top of the range at the time I bought it. And let me tell you, the box experience when you unbox it is totally different. Like you are definitively on a premium product. Here, the unboxing didn't give me this vibe. So, you know, like you're gonna say like, hey, but nobody cares about the box. I do believe you do. When you spend this type of money, you want to have like the you know, like the good experience, and I didn't have it. So now let's talk about, in my opinion, like the biggest negative point when it comes to this card. The chipset which provide the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth in this motherboard is not supported on Linux as we speak. So you won't have any Wi-Fi 7 or Wi-Fi 5 or whatever, like you won't have any Wi-Fi support, but you also won't have any Bluetooth support on the motherboard itself. And I've been doing my research, and when you go on the GitHub page on the Wi-Fi support for this specific model, so the model we are talking about here is the MT7927 chip, it's not going to be supported at least for 1 year. Right now, like the actual like owner of this GitHub repo, Moro NR, I hope I'm pronouncing his name well, I didn't butcher it too hard, is predicting that this is not going to be pushed towards the kernel this year. Like it might be this year, might not be this year. Like you see, I think it's too much to expect Realtek Wi-Fi 6 and 7 USB support in the kernel this year. So you're gonna have to wait, because this has been written in January 2025. You're gonna have to wait if you want to use the chipset inside this motherboard. I found an alternative. I'm gonna make a full video about what I found out to actually use the Bluetooth. I don't use Wi-Fi, but at least the Bluetooth, because Bluetooth was really like the hard break for me. But this is the reality, guys. You know, when you have like top-notch hardware like that and you want to use it on Linux, you have to wait. Like right now, I'm in this situation with the 9070 XT, like the GPU. We just have to wait and see and try to participate, feedback to the developer to help them to get there. But, you know, this is a community-driven project. It is what it is. Now, another negative. Those negatives you will see, they are like pretty small. They're not crazy, but I still need to mention them. I'm not a fan of the connector they put there on the card for the Wi-Fi antenna. It's kind of like a clip, and I feel like I'm gonna break it like in like 3 or 4 like in and out. It doesn't seem like it's really sturdy. Again, some of you guys don't care, but I don't know why they try to do something fancy here where you don't need it. It's just my 2 cents. I think it's kind of meh. Another like point I didn't appreciate at the beginning is when you look at the card itself, there is no like Q code display. So when you have a problem and you are stuck with the RAM or you're stuck with something else, you know, an overclock that didn't go very well, you don't really know what's going on. And it took me some time to understand like the QLED signification here. So instead of having a code, you have like those little LEDs that will pop up and tell you like what is working or not working. And it will just like come out with a different color. I think it's cool on one hand, but me, I like the little like Q code display, because sometimes you can transform it and see like what is the actual temperature on your motherboard or your CPU in the BIOS. And yeah, in my opinion, like it sucks. Now we are talking about the Linux function. If you look at the bottom here, you will have like connector for the RGB. And I know gamers, we like our RGB, right? So this motherboard doesn't have like integrated RGB, but they have the header for any type of exterior RGB you could have in your case. And those one, for whatever reason, they don't work on Linux with open RGB. It's just a no-go. I was not able to make them work. So maybe it's going to be solved in the future, or maybe it might not, but you want to be aware of it. Like no RGB at all on this motherboard. And the last one, but I believe it's an issue related to all the AM5 like motherboard out there. There is not that many serial ATA port when you think about it. There is only a support for 4 serial ATA ports. So I know some of you guys, you don't care, but I think it's pretty limiting if you want to put it in a server in the future, because, you know, if you are running, I don't know, any type of like hard drive, sometimes it's good to use a SATA port included with a motherboard instead of buying a HBA card. Well, here you're gonna have only 4 SATA ports, so something to take in consideration too. So here we are, guys. This is my review after 1 month and a half. Just to sum it up, overall, I'm super happy about the motherboard. It's a great platform. I was able to overclock the memory like crazy. It's super solid. My CPU overclock is also super solid. I'm just a little bit disappointed that I don't have the features that most of the gamer and also like same priced motherboard have. That's why, you know, I share with you like my feedback towards that. But overall, I don't have a lot to complain about. The issue related to the Bluetooth, I was able to fix it by buying, you will see, a little device, USB dongle. I bought it for like $10, so it's nothing. But I was, again, like disappointed a little bit because, you know, like you watch those reviews on Windows and you're like, whoa, this is great. Like everything is going to be working great. And then you arrive on Linux and it's like, there is this little part missing. I do believe it's going to be solved in the near future. You know, maybe like 5 months, 6 months from now, everything I said will be irrelevant towards the problem of the actual like motherboard. But, you know, I had to share them with you to make sure that you are not disappointed when you know, buy it. But overall, to me, it's a banger. Like, let's be honest. If it was negative, I would have sent it back to the store and get another model. But, you know, the 10 gigabyte Ethernet network worked like a charm. I've been pushing it to the limit. No disconnection, not extra warm-up, like nothing. And this is really what I was already focusing on with this motherboard, and I'm super happy about it. So guys, let me know in the comment below if, you know, you are interested in this motherboard, or, you know, if you want to add some things that I forget to add in this review. But yeah, that's it. That's all for me. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, put a thumbs up. And I want to thank all the financial supporters of this channel. You guys are the best. You did it through YouTube or Patreon. And again, thank you very much, guys. And yeah, that's it. That's all for this one. As always, take care and see you in the next one. Bisous, bisous.